Hello, everyone. Welcome to Crime Center. We talk about everything crime related here. Today, I'll be telling a story based on true events. It's a shocking story. It's about a man that lets greed and desire take over rational thinking. The events end up starting a chain reaction that affects multiple people's lives forever. Well, if you're interested in everything crime related, then you've come to the right place because it's all that I do. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you can be notified every time I put out a new video. I want to thank you in advance to everybody who enjoys these videos. So today's story is about 45-year-old Elizabeth Sennette. One morning, as she was having breakfast with her two sons in March of 1988, her 25-year-old Chuck and her 23-year-old Mike, they were preparing to head to the work for that day. Having breakfast, put their plates away, put on their coats, probably kissed their mother goodbye. Then they headed out for the day. It was 40 degrees. That's about a typical temperature morning for Sheffield, Alabama. It's a small city with a population of around 11,000 located in Colbert County. Elizabeth, known as Liz to family and friends, took pride in being a devoted wife and mother. I've heard that it was a true joy in her life to be a grandmother. She loved those grandchildren very much. She enjoyed life. Her family and many who knew her saw her as a kind community member, a wonderful mother, and a perfect wife. So she wasn't only loved by her family, she was loved by the community, which means she probably did a lot of good things for that community. So Liz Sennett had met Charles Sennett Sr., her husband. It's been told that he had many difficulties in his life, still stood strong as a man should, stayed strong with God. He was a pastor at the Church of Christ, and anybody who talks about him says he loved his congregation. Not only was he devoted to his members, he was a devoted father, devoted husband. He was in he was in his second marriage. At a younger age, Charles had tragically lost his first wife. It broke his heart, made him feel like he could never get past that stage in life. But as life would have it, he trusted in God, kept doing his godly things, being a pastor, helping others. And, he got over that hump, met Liz, and they got married. So, sometimes when you lose things in life, you think, oh my God, that's it. That's the end. I'm done for. I'll never find nothing as good as that again. It's not true. If you just hold on, you're a little strong, patient, what you're meant to have in life will eventually come to you. So they fall in love and they find themselves walking down the aisle once again. And as time went on, Liz and Charles were blessed with two children, both boys, as I mentioned before, Chuck and Mike, uh, who were the center of their lives. Everything seemed right in the world. Liz thought Charles was very blessed because not only was he loved by his family, but he was loved and adored by his church family. So you're loved by two different families. What more could you really ask for? So that day, as Liz went about her day doing house chores, she heard a knock at the door. She would go to the front door, she would open it and find two men standing there. Both men looked to her with smiles, and one introduced himself as Mr. Parker. Liz didn't know either man, but they looked friendly enough. This is in 1988. Back then, crime wasn't too huge. You could actually trust your community members in a small town. There was no having to lock your doors and the things we do today. It was less dangerous. Well, probably as dangerous, just not in small towns. Everybody knew everybody. So Mr. Parker tells Liz that she had spoken to her husband and gotten his permission to come by and take a look at their property so they could go hunting. So Liz knew that a bunch of people knew her husband and always came around. So, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. She said, okay, go ahead, have a look, see if you like it. Basically, if her husband sent these guys, they were trustworthy. So she confirmed that she understood. The two men got the permission they sought. They left, went to the back of the house, and went off into where it turned into woods. And they disappeared. Later that Friday afternoon, as Liz was expecting Charles to come home at any time, he had been at the church since morning, she heard a knock on the door. She probably thought that it was Charles, happy to see her husband, goes to the door, opens it, it's the two guys again. So all the guys did was thank her again, let her know, like, hey, we're getting off of your property. We saw what we needed to see. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. And then as she's about to close the door, one of the guys says, oh, I'm sorry to bother you one more time, but do you mind if I could use your restroom? So Liz, not thinking anything of it, yeah, sure, come on in. She invites the guys into her house. They go to the restroom. A little while later, her husband Charles pulled into the driveway. After getting his things, he closed the door, made his way to the front door. He opened it, but saw that it was already cracked a little bit. So he would probably look at it like, oh, Liz probably forgot to shut the door. No big deal. Like I said, back in the day, it wasn't strange to not lock your doors. So, he opened the door, and one of the things he sees on the ground is broken glass. Now there's alarms going off in his head. He goes in to investigate more, and as he walks toward his couch, off to the side, he sees there's things scattered everywhere. Somebody had ransacked their house. So now he knows something is wrong. As he takes a few more steps, reaches his couch, he looks over behind it, and he sees a leg. The leg belongs to his wife, and she's deceased on the floor. He looks at her, and from her injuries, there's no hope. He looks at her chest, it's not moving, the injuries, the blood, and he drops what he's doing and he goes to call the cops. Investigator Ronnie Mays is the officer that received the call at about 11:44 a.m. He dispatched a rescue squad and a sheriff to the Sennette home on Dog Coon Cemetery Road. May himself and another deputy arrived at about 12:05 p.m., so very soon after. And as soon as they pulled up, the rescue squad pulled up, pretty much showed up at the same time. The rescue squad immediately goes to Miss Sennette, starts looking her over, checking for her pulse. They have to do all these things to make sure that there's nothing they can do to save her life. And they immediately yell out that there's a pulse, which surprised Charles because he didn't feel a pulse. He thought she was dead. It's over. They're just going to come, take it away. He was going to answer questions, and then he can grieve, right? So the rescue squad automatically gets her on a gurney, takes her straight to the ambulance, and they rush off to the hospital. But on the way, she passes away from her injuries. Investigator May had seen an odd look come across Charles's face whenever it was said that she had a pulse. And he didn't really think nothing of it at the time, but it kind of alerted him. because, when something like this happens, the suspect automatically, in most cases, is the husband. So he's just storing these little things away in his head for later. He knows he's the one that's going to investigate it. And it kind of gave him an idea of how to start the investigation. So that's how the case started. So Investigator May eventually would start asking Charles Sennett questions. He's really the only one that he can talk to right now. He's the husband, he's a suspect automatically. And, you know, Charles answers all the questions. He says he was at the church, has his alibi. So Ronnie May goes and starts answering the phones, getting tips coming in, and he gets some pretty weird tips. Confidential informants are coming through. They have information on the case, and all of this leads to them basically learning exactly what happened. So they would send out investigators with warrants. They would check the names that were given to them, and they would actually find evidence, and they would get confessions, and all of this with the tips, confidential informants, confessions. They would know exactly what happened, and it was fast. So they would call in Charles Sennett, and they would let him know that he is a prime suspect, and they would give him very little information because they were still investigating. They didn't want him running or doing anything crazy. So he said he understood. He answered everything he could answer, swore he was telling the truth. He had nothing to do with it. He was at the church, and that was the end of it. Charles leaves. Then investigators start getting the warrants to go and search these other guys' houses. And all of a sudden, another call comes in. Somebody got shot. They need to come in, send the rescue squad, investigators. So, Investigator May gets there, and there's a man who shot himself in the chest and took his own life. And it was Charles. Shocked by that, he would continue his investigation and later find out that once they told him he was the main suspect, he had actually went over to the church that he taught in and confessed to his congregation that he had exterminated his wife and the reasons why, and then he would go and remove himself from this world. So, according to Charles, and the confidential informants led them to three other guys, and they almost automatically confessed. So, according to those things, this is what happened. Charles had contacted a tenant of his named Billy Gray Williams, and he had offered him $3,000 to remove his wife from the picture immediately, no questions asked. It was later learned that this pastor was in serious debt from gambling. He was also having an affair with a church member, and he wanted a fresh start in life. In order to have a fresh start, he had to remove the old one. You can't have a pastor who has gambling problems, in debt, and then gets a divorce from his wife. He's a pastor. So I'm guessing he thought If I get somebody to remove her, then I don't get a divorce. Nobody finds out about the gambling, and he's scot free to start over brand new, right? So, all of this mainly done for money and because he no longer wanted to be married to his wife. So, this guy, Billy Gray Williams, he goes and he contacts two guys, Kenneth Smith and John Forrest Parker, and offered them $1,000 each to do this task for him. And of course, why not? Both men agree, and it changed numerous people's lives forever. So, according to almost everybody, Liz, she was a beautiful, innocent, church going mother who lost her life with so much left to live. You have to think about her sons, Chuck and Mike. They lost a mother, no longer able to grow with her, learn from her. They lost a love that only a mother could give, and lost in all of this mess, they lost their father. Now that's hard to lose a mother and a father, but with the circumstances behind it, that's got to be really, really mentally exhausting. And Charles, not only did he not start over fresh, he ruined his life and he lost it. Instead of facing up to what he did, he would rather exterminate himself. He lost a family that truly loved him. Two families, the church family and his regular family. Now, the men who agreed to this let their greed control them. As it was said before, eventually confessed to everything they did. I'll be naming each man separately, and I'll explain exactly what happened to them. I'm not going to get into too much detail into the first two, but the last one, that's the one that I'm going to explain a little something about. So let's go to the first guy, Billy Gray Williams, the man who received the $3,000 and recruited the other two and gave them $1,000. He didn't actually show up to hurt Liz, but he's the one that orchestrated all this after the husband. And because of all that, he was given a life sentence. He sat in prison for a long time with nothing but time to regret everything he ever did, to wish that he probably never would have done that, to have just gone and earned money a different way instead of being greedy and doing this crime for taking somebody so innocent. He died in prison from health complications in 2010, and not much information can be found on him besides what I've just told you. The second guy is John Forrest Parker. He confessed. He confessed that he spoke to Liz and conned his way into the house by asking her to use the restroom. He then told the cops that he went inside the restroom and put socks over his hands because he didn't have gloves and he didn't want to leave any DNA. So this guy was one half of the two men who brutally beat Liz and said that she begged them not to hurt her. And they did it anyways. They were heartless and unforgiving and cruel. They beat her with a galvanized pipe repeatedly, trying to remove her by brute force, and she fought. She fought very hard. She clung to life. And when the two men saw that she was going to hold on with everything that she had, they grabbed a hunting knife and they put it in her on both sides of the neck, her face, her nose, the base of her neck. And there was just so much that her body could take before she finally, let go. It was brutal. No idea why they would do something like this for $1,000 each. So she finally passes, and for this guy's sickening deeds, he was given the death penalty. He also would go in 2010 like the first guy, and they would give him the lethal injection, assuring that he would never hurt anybody like that ever again, regardless of how long ago it was, what his age was. He would never hurt anybody again. Now, the next guy, Kenneth Smith, he didn't confess right away. Investigators suspected him, and those search warrants I told you that they were getting, they went to his home and they found a VCR that belonged to the Sennettes. He later told them that they trashed the place to make it look like a robbery had gone wrong, try to cover their tracks, didn't want to leave any DNA. Let's mess some stuff up so it looks like somebody robbed the place. So in 2022, after he sat in prison for a very long time on death row, uh, he was led to what is called the death chamber. This is where prisoners are put to await their punishment. He said his goodbyes to his family, ate his last meal, which is a privilege. Liz didn't get to eat a last meal before going. And on November 17th at 7:57 p.m., the guards would end Smith's call to his wife. He'd be handcuffed and shackled and led from the death chamber to the gurney. Allegedly, 2 minutes later, the 11th Circuit Court would issue a stay of execution. Smith's lawyers would call the Alabama Department of Corrections at 8:02 p.m. and relay this message. The ADOC replied and confirmed they had received the orders, but Smith remained on the gurney until midnight. So it was alleged ADOC never informed Smith of the court's ruling. So he lay there, waiting to be injected at any moment, mentally destroying his mind. Like he's thinking, any minute now I'm going to die. When is it coming? Why is it taking so long? When it did happen, the injection team came in and tried putting IV lines into his veins. They tried to insert them into his arms. It's not clear if this was before or after the stay. So he lay there continuing to be poked and prodded, and Smith would tell them, hey, you're hurting me. You're putting the needle in my muscle, and it hurts. It's not in a vein. And it's allegedly said that the person doing it said, no, I'm not. It's kind of hard to feel sorry for the guy. Like, yeah, I don't want somebody to go through torture. I mean, but you put yourself on that gurney. You didn't care that you were hurting somebody as they begged you not to hurt them. But now you want some kind of leniency because it hurts. But you didn't care about anybody else hurting. You didn't care about the lives you destroyed, the people you hurt. So, anyways, for reasons unknown, he was allegedly put into an upside down crucifixion position and left this way for a few moments while a guard left. The only thing I could think of is they were trying to rush blood down to his upper extremities. That way the veins would pop out and they could finally insert this line because they sat there poking him and poking him. Couldn't find a vein. So upon return, the guards came back in and he was injected with an unknown substance. Later on, it was to be believed to be a sedative. It was a member with unknown credentials that stabbed him all around the collarbone with a large needle, still trying to insert the second IV. That's why I assume that's why he was in the upside down position, trying to make blood rush to his veins. So at around 11:21 p.m., Commissioner John Hamm spoke to the press and informed them the procedure was called off. his execution was botched. Later, he states that he was dizzy, he couldn't lift his arms, he reported struggling to breathe, shaking, sweating, and couldn't walk without help. He also claimed that he got PTSD from this, said he was on multiple meds, and prison doctors said he suffered from insomnia, anxiety, and depression. So, with everything that was just mentioned, Smith tried overturning his death warrant. He put in appeal after appeal, and they were all denied, regardless of what he did. And right before his second execution, he tried one more time to get out of it by using any excuse that he could. It was denied. On Thursday, January 26, 2024, justice came knocking. According to ADOC, there was another execution method. It just had never been used before, but it was on the law books as approved. Smith would be the first to be put away using this method. There was many activists. They were calling foul, saying this was cruel and unusual punishment. No one could know if this was going to hurt him, if he was going to suffer. I guess the activists forgot about Liz. While being caught up in the moment, what about her torture? What about her pain? What about her life? How come no activists sat outside and active, tried making these guys get this warrant done to them faster? Nobody did that. Justice wasn't served any faster. It wasn't rushed. But you want to sit out there and delay it even more because it's going to hurt him? It might hurt him. One of her sons later said, "No one asked Mama how she wanted to die." And isn't that the truth? Nobody asked her how she wanted to go. Nobody cared about her pain, her suffering, her torture. She didn't get a last meal. So, regardless of all these activists, the new method known as nitrogen hypoxia was administered to Smith at the age of 58. He had like a gas mask on. They put it over his face and they pumped that sucker full of nitrogen until his pulse went flat. It was alleged he took 22 minutes to be pronounced deceased, and in the end, Liz and her family finally received justice. It was a long time coming for the horrible crime committed against her. Some people don't realize the cost of a life. It doesn't really mean much to many people these days, but it's precious. And it shouldn't be diminished by smooth talking lawyers trying to get criminals who did this to her off the hook. They snatched her life away, but in turn, they gave up theirs for $1,000. So many people's paths crossed and ended tragically, but the criminals, no doubt, received justice. It doesn't give Liz her life back, it doesn't give her kids their mother back, but it finally puts her to rest. She got justice. May she rest in peace. So I would like to know your thoughts and opinions. Everybody who responds in the comments, I will try to answer every single person. I like to have conversation. If you feel like something I said was wrong, let me know. If you feel like I'm right, let me know. If you just want to talk about it, let me know. I will respond. I'm very active. But don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that way when a new video comes out, you can be one of the first to see it. I want to thank every one of you for watching this video. even though it's a sad video. I just hope that you can enjoy it in the sense that of the way that I told it, how informative it was, because it's kind of hard to like a video of somebody losing their life. It's kind of hard to like a video of, family losing somebody. But if you just like the way I set it up, the way I told it, you can like that. I know all the real ones out there will hit the like button. And hopefully, everybody watching this video will become one of my very first members. And then years from now, I can say that you were there from the beginning. Anyways, thank you for watching my first video. If there's anything you think I can change to make it more interesting, let me know that. I want to thank you for watching. Welcome to Crime Center. I'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.